Let me ask you something before we begin. How often do you see someone spend years telling the world this is my truth, only to have that very truth turn around and publicly destroy them? Because that is exactly what just happened to Prince Harry. And the reason this moment feels so shocking is not because the media did anything clever, but because Harry did it to himself, in open court, under oath, with his own words as the evidence. Prince Harry walked into that London courtroom looking confident, even a little smug, as if this was finally the day he would humiliate the British press the way he believes they humiliated him. This lawsuit was supposed to be his moment of vindication, the proof that he was right all along and that the media had lied, exaggerated and abused their power. For years, he has framed himself as the ultimate victim of tabloid cruelty, a man hunted and traumatized by headlines. But instead of walking out a hero, he walked straight into one of the most embarrassing legal reversals a public figure can experience. The moment everything changed was almost surreal. Harry took the stand and flatly denied having certain conversations, looking the court in the eye and insisting they never happened. His tone suggested certainty, as though there was no possible way anyone could contradict him. And then, calmly and methodically, the Daily Mail's legal team opened a copy of Spare and began reading passages aloud. Not rumours, not leaked texts, not anonymous sources. Harry's own words, published, edited, promoted, and sold worldwide by Harry himself. You could practically feel the oxygen leave the room. The same memoir Harry proudly described as his honest truth, the same book he claimed was fact-checked and accurate down to the last detail, was now being used to prove that he was saying one thing in court and another thing for profit. Watching someone realize, in real time, that their own $20 million book has become a legal weapon against them is something you rarely see. It was a textbook example of self-inflicted damage. What made it even worse was the irony. Harry spent months on a global press tour, insisting Spare was the most truthful account of royal life ever written. He repeatedly told interviewers that he stood by every word, that nothing in the book was exaggerated, and that it reflected his lived reality. And now those same words were being treated as evidence that he could not be trusted under oath. If the book is true, then his testimony wasn't. And if his testimony was true, then the book wasn't. Either way, his credibility took a devastating hit. Courtroom observers described the moment as catastrophic. One said Harry looked like a man who had just realized he misunderstood the entire game he was playing. Another noted that his reaction suggested he genuinely had not anticipated this strategy, which might be the most damning detail of all. How does someone enter a major legal battle without preparing for the most obvious contradiction possible? Did no one cross-check his testimony against his best-selling autobiography? Or did Harry himself simply forget what he wrote? And that was only the beginning of the problem. This case has already burned through an eye-watering £40 million in legal costs, a number so large the judge felt compelled to issue a warning directly to the claimants. £40 million is not pocket change, even for a prince. That is the kind of money that could fund entire humanitarian projects. Yet here, it has been poured into a legal crusade that now looks increasingly unstable. The judge made it very clear that if the claimants lose, they could be personally liable for a significant portion of those costs. For Harry, this warning landed at a particularly bad time. His Netflix deal has failed to deliver the cultural impact executives expected. His Spotify partnership collapsed so badly, it became an industry punchline. Speaking engagements are no longer flooding in. The financial safety net he assumed would always be there suddenly looks a lot thinner. Insiders close to the proceedings say Harry appeared shocked by how aggressive and prepared the defense was, as if he expected his status to carry more weight than it actually does. But courtrooms do not operate on deference or sympathy. They operate on evidence and consistency. And on both fronts, Harry struggled. The central question now is whether his own testimony has destroyed any real chance of winning this case, because credibility is the foundation of everything. Once it collapses, there is nothing left to stand on. One specific contradiction stood out more than all the others. Harry was questioned about conversations with his ex-girlfriend Chelsea Davy during a trip to Botswana. He firmly denied that certain private exchanges had taken place, positioning himself once again as the victim of media fabrication. And then the defense delivered the knockout blow. They opened Spare to the relevant pages and read Harry's own detailed descriptions of those very conversations, written in his voice, published under his name, and sold around the world. Legal analysts immediately pointed out how serious this was. When sworn testimony is directly contradicted by a witness's own published writing, it creates a credibility crisis that is almost impossible to recover from. This goes far beyond a simple memory lapse. It raises questions about honesty, reliability, and intent. Some even whispered the word "no witness" once attached to their name: perjury. Lying under oath is not a small mistake, and royal titles do not make someone immune from consequences. As if that were not enough, Harry's behavior on the stand only made things worse. Multiple times, the judge had to intervene because Harry kept arguing instead of answering questions. He appeared combative, impatient, and visibly irritated, as though he viewed cross-examination as a personal attack rather than a legal necessity. At one point, the judge bluntly told him he was doing what many litigants do, which is arguing back instead of respecting the process. That moment mattered more than people realize. Judges do not rebuke witnesses lightly, especially not high-profile ones. Each intervention signals that the witness is undermining their own case. Observers described Harry as looking spoiling for a fight, unable to control his reactions when challenged. This is not the demeanor of someone calmly presenting the truth. It is the demeanor of someone who feels cornered. Then came the emotional moment that should have helped him but ended up hurting him even more. Harry became tearful while talking about Meghan Markle and the toll media coverage had taken on her. On the surface, it sounded powerful and human, but the timing made no sense. This lawsuit concerns events that happened before he even met Meghan. The tears appeared during questioning from his own lawyer, not during cross-examination, which immediately raised eyebrows among journalists and legal watchers. Many described the moment as rehearsed rather than spontaneous. When emotional displays appear during friendly questioning, but not under pressure, it creates the impression of performance, not authenticity. In a courtroom, that distinction matters. Judges and lawyers are trained to recognize when emotion is being used strategically, and the consensus among observers was that this moment did more harm than good. The hypocrisy at the heart of Harry's case was impossible to ignore. He complained passionately about newspapers profiting from his private life, while sitting on a personal fortune built from doing exactly that. Spare alone earned him around $20 million. His Netflix deal was reportedly worth close to $100 million. Spotify added another $20 million. Interviews, documentaries, speaking fees, all followed. No media outlet has monetized Harry's life more aggressively than Harry himself. One commentator summed it up perfectly by saying that Prince Harry is the most successful commercializer of his own trauma. That line landed hard because it exposed the contradiction at the core of his argument. You cannot claim exploitation while simultaneously building a global business model around selling your story. You cannot accuse others of invasion while inviting cameras into your home. Even more damaging was the revelation that Harry had authorized journalists from the very outlet he is suing to speak on his behalf during the legal process. In other words, he was willing to use the media when it suited him, while condemning them when it did not. The defense made sure that contradiction was impossible to ignore, and Harry's legal team had no convincing response. Another pillar of Harry's argument also collapsed under scrutiny. He has repeatedly claimed that the royal family prevented him from suing the media while he was a working royal. That narrative fell apart the moment it was pointed out that Prince William successfully sued media outlets multiple times while still fulfilling royal duties. The precedent was there, clear and undeniable. This left Harry with only two explanations, neither of them flattering. Either he was not telling the truth about being prevented from taking legal action, or he was so disconnected from his own family's affairs that he genuinely did not know his brother had already done exactly what he claimed was impossible. Both possibilities seriously undermine his credibility. Outside the courtroom, the emotional reality was just as bleak. Sources say that during his time in the UK, Harry repeatedly checked to see if his father or brother had reached out. They did not. After years of public accusations, books, interviews and documentaries, the silence from his family was complete. When he appeared in court without any royal support, sitting instead with celebrity acquaintances, the isolation was painfully obvious. Some analysts now believe this lawsuit was never just about the media. They suggest it may have been an attempt to force engagement from his family to create a situation where they could not ignore him. If that was the goal, it failed. The silence remained, and the message was clear. Financially, the situation is becoming increasingly dangerous. If Harry loses this case, he could face personal liability running into tens of millions of pounds. With entertainment deals underperforming and industry goodwill fading, sustaining his lifestyle becomes a real concern. Insiders in Hollywood describe growing reluctance to invest in further Sussex projects, citing exhaustion with the drama and doubts about returns. What we are witnessing now looks less like a legal battle and more like a pattern of self-destruction. The memoir that burned bridges, the interviews that deepened family rifts, the courtroom performance that shattered credibility. Each step seems to compound the damage rather than repair it. This humiliation does not exist in isolation. It fits perfectly into the broader story of a man who had unprecedented privilege, global sympathy, and limitless opportunity, yet repeatedly made choices that narrowed his options instead of expanding them. The question now is whether recovery is even possible, or whether this courtroom moment will be remembered as the point of no return. So ask yourself this: can Prince Harry rebuild his credibility after contradicting himself under oath with his own book? Can he stabilize his finances while legal costs soar and deals fade? Can family relationships survive after years of public betrayal? Or are we watching the final unraveling of a prince who had everything and slowly gave it all away? Let me know what you think, and if you want more deep dives like this, stay connected to Carter Mindset, because this story is far from over.